You're listening to the Redefining Wealth podcast with Patrice Washington. Of course, this is where you come every week to learn more about what true wealth is. Wealth is not just money and material possessions, as the world would try to convince you. What we understand is the original 12th century definition of wealth is all about the condition of well-being and happiness. And one of the things that we get to do is shift our mindset from all of the lack and scarcity and fear that is crippling, I think, a lot of social media posts and the conversations and the news and all of the local and national and global news stories, and still tap back in to our own abundance. And so this episode is all about calling in abundance. And I couldn't have thought of a better person to call for us as a community of purpose chasers than Cathy Heller. Y'all know I love me some Cathy Heller. Cathy is a renowned teacher, top ranked podcaster, and best-selling author. She hosts one of the top spiritual podcasts, Abundant Ever After, which has been downloaded, get this, 50 million times. And she's the author of the USA Today best-selling book, which we are reading in the Redefining Wealth Community Book Club, Abundant Ever After, Tools for Creating a Life of Prosperity and Ease. She's a practitioner of the law of reception and has a deep understanding of the universal principles of manifestation. Cathy guides individuals on a transformative journey towards unlocking their highest potential. And today she is going to help us do the same. So after the affirmation of the week, the next thing you'll hear is my conversation with the one, the only Cathy Heller. Welcome back to the Redefining Wealth podcast, Cathy.
I mean, I just got to hear that intro and I feel my whole soul is just like rainbows and confetti hearts. Is so generous, but also just your specific way of loving people. The way you love people, the way you champion people, the way you see God pour through other people is so incredibly special. And I'm so blessed. So thank you so much for that.
I'm so blessed. You are such a mirror. Like if there was a mirror for everything that you said, for me, it would be you. And as we're preparing to gear up for our book club around Abundant Ever After, I have to tell you, I was reading the book and you tell a story as it was given to you by Dr. Lisa Miller. It's about red door kind of versus yellow door. It's this concept of, walking up to the red door and realizing it's stuck, and realizing you may have to make a pivot. And there's just like this hairpin just slightly off to the side where there's yellow doors that you didn't even know existed. And you were a yellow door for me in 2020. I don't even know. And I've said this to you before, and I still think, Cathy, you are such a champion. You are such like a girl's girl, like such an incredible person that I know that you know who you are and what you carry, but literally in 2020, the first time I was supposed to interview you, we had connection issues. And you're like, well, maybe we're just supposed to talk and like get to know one another. And you asked me a few questions and then you gave me some suggestions. I felt so vulnerable with you. And so you were just so easy to talk to. And you gave me one suggestion. It was just about how I was launching at the time. And you literally changed my life, my business. You changed everything in one conversation. And when I was reading that in the book and you talked about yellow doors, I knew that I had to just start this. Why do I feel like crying? I knew I just had to start this by saying, you were a yellow door for me. And 5 years later, you are the gift that keeps giving. So I honor you. I'm so grateful that God saw fit for our paths to cross.
Oh my God. I cannot even believe that, honestly, because you're such a powerhouse. And to think that I could even have 1 ounce of being there to give you any clarity or insight. I mean, it's really like, wow, such an honor, such a gift. And really like that day that we talked, it's so easy to love you. Like you're such a special, it's like looking at moonlight. It's like, why would you not want to look at the moonlight? It's so beautiful and it's so raw and pure. And so I'm just so touched that there's anything that I could have done to help you. And you helped me too in so many ways. When you came to speak at our event, I remember feeling like there was 3 minutes of what you said that was worth the entire event for me. And I think it's because you have the courage to know your own spiritual power. And then what you do with that, since it's so pure, is you remind other people about their spiritual power. You remind people that what's most powerful about us is what's within us, and that God has called each of us because there's something unique that we bring to the world, and you embody it. And when you embody something like that, you're a walking Wi-Fi router for everybody else. Everybody else comes into their own expansion because you're there. So it's amazing. And I do love that whole story about the yellow doors and the red doors. And that's my friend, Dr. Lisa Miller's quote, but I put it in there because I love it so much. And she said that to me. She said, picture your life and imagine that there were things in your life that you just wanted so badly to have this thing happen, this particular relationship, this particular career milestone. And for me, one of those things was moving to LA at 24. I had been living in Jerusalem for 3 years, like communing with God, talking to the divine. And then I just felt called to go to LA and use my voice. Isn't that funny? I was like, I heard him say, go use your voice. And so I like to write music and I wanted a record deal. And I got a record deal and I was sitting with Lady Gaga and she was recording Paparazzi with 36 violins. It was absolutely extraordinary. And then 6 weeks later, I get a call that I get dropped from this record label. And I was devastated because I said, God, I don't understand. I'm so confused. You got me all the way up to this place where I thought you and I had an idea that we were on the same page, but I just got dropped. And then I thought, oh, no, you know what it is? It was just the wrong record label. I'm going to do another record deal. And so sure enough, next thing I know, I'm sitting across from Craig Kalman at the Peninsula Hotel and I'm doing a record deal. I'm going to sign a record deal with Atlantic Records. And I'm saying to myself, oh, this makes so much more sense. Atlantic Records, they had a different idea for me, which was that I was going to Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson had just written the soundtrack to Curious George, which was a movie. And they said, that's the way we're going to put you in the world, is your music is going to be a soundtrack to a movie. And they found me a movie script, which was Fraggle Rock, and Weinstein Company was going to put this movie out. And next thing I know, the movie's not going to get made and I don't have a vehicle and they drop me again. And I remember driving in the car and I'm crying so hard. I pulled over because I couldn't even see. I was crying so hard. And I remember thinking, my rabbi said to me, what good is something if it's not used for what it's meant to be used for? Like if you use a spoon, as a wrench, it's a problem. It's a spoon. If you use a guitar, he said, and instead of it playing music, you put a potted plant in the center and you use it to hold a plant, then the guitar feels it's not being used, right? It's not in service to its divine potential. And I'm sitting there in the car crying, thinking about that, thinking, God, why won't you use me? What else am I supposed to do? And at that point, long story short, but my friend said to me, give up on your dreams, be realistic, get a real job, grow up. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? They're like, just have a job that makes money. Forget the passion, forget the dreams, forget the purpose, just make money, be an adult. As if that's what you do when you're an adult. So I go get a job and I say to my friends, well, what kind of job makes money? And she says, well, there's 2 jobs that make money, either finance. Well, I'm like, great. That's not me. That's Patrice Washington's job. I'm like, I can't add or subtract. I can't do numbers. So then they're like, well, the other thing you could do is sell commercial real estate. So I'm a manifester. Next thing I know, the synchronicity lines up. I'm standing in line at the Cheesecake Factory. There's a guy standing next to me. He tells me, you have a great personality. He says, come work for me. I said, what do you do? He said, I own commercial real estate. I'm like, boom, done. My friend said, that's the real job I need. I go work for him. 2 years later, I'm driving a fancy car. I'm helping him sell shopping centers and I'm miserable. My jaw hurts from clenching my jaw. I'm dating somebody I don't really want to be dating. I'm wearing outfits I don't really want to be wearing. And I see myself in the elevator and I'm starting to cry because I don't recognize this girl. I don't know who she is. I don't know what part she's playing. I want nothing to do with it. And I quit the job. And I wind up saying to myself, is there any other way that I could do music? And for 10 years, I wind up licensing my music to TV shows like Grey's Anatomy, Pretty Little Liars, McDonald's commercials. And it was quite fun and fulfilling. And I had my daughters and I got married and I wrote music. And then I thought to myself, I think I'm meant to do more than have my song in the back of a Chili's commercial. but I get to be a mom and I get paid really well. I'm making 300 grand, 400 grand writing songs. That's a gift. But I still felt like God wasn't fully using me. And then a friend of mine said, why don't you start a podcast? And I was 37 at the time. And I'm like, I don't know. I guess I could. And I start the podcast. And within a year, we had 1 million downloads. And then we had 50 million downloads. And then I realized the podcast was my yellow door. Because as Dr. Lisa Miller says, and I wrote this quote of hers in the book, you can push so hard on a door. And when God has a different path for you, that door is not going to open because it's not yours. And then usually on your path, out of nowhere, there's like a hairpin turn that you make. And it feels so simple, it feels so subtle. But you make a turn, and in the moment of making this turn, you don't really think that much about it. And all of a sudden, you're halfway down the path, you've walked through the yellow door, and you go, oh my gosh, this is exactly my path. And I then went back and thought, oh my goodness, I thought I was supposed to use my voice by being a songwriter. Can you imagine if I was a songwriter right now and if I had gotten what I wanted and I was on tour all the time and I had to wear what they wanted me to wear and I had to sing the same 10 songs in every stadium and I couldn't be there with my children. And instead of singing my song, I do a podcast to encourage people to sing their song. And that's what you and I both have in common, is that our greatest feeling of joy is helping people sing their song. And I thought, God, you're so good because you had such a bigger dream for me. It wasn't look at me. It was come with me. It wasn't come listen to me sing. It was you got a song to sing. And we both know that the most impressive people in the world, they don't do impressive things. They make everyone feel impressive because God made us all with the same magic. It's just used differently. And when you use your magic to help people find their magic, you're the luckiest one because you become the recipient of so much purpose. And you and I talk about this. This is the last thing I'll say, but everyone talks about how can you be successful? Success. And I think Oprah said this, and I love repeating it. I don't even think you want success. I think you want significance. And significance is something that you don't even realize how much of that you have and how significant you can be for people. And here's the thing about success, when you find significance, success doesn't miss you because people who are truly significant become very successful and fulfilled, right?
Yeah.
So those yellow doors, what I love about it is that you can surrender because you don't have to be in control because there's a creator in control. And how lovely is that to remember that you were put here and therefore he knows your address and therefore your only job is to be the best, most loving, most grateful, most passionate version of yourself. And those gifts will be put to good use. How about that?
So good. So good. Okay, you guys see why I love Cathy so much. You just have
we
to
speak
open
the same
your
language.
mouth. Oh, so good. And yes, the fulfillment. For me, I always say just being able to help people see their own purpose and their own light is what gives me the fulfillment. It's what gives me a sense of purpose, helping you see your purpose and what's possible.
Right.
And you know, something that I've been saying since 2022, I would say quite a bit is, as I was transitioning through my separation and divorce and, you know, the move cross country and all the things, I kept saying, I feel like God is giving me permission to dream a new dream. And one of the things that you talk about in the book is dreaming a bigger dream. And what I found with several of my clients in one-on-one coaching or in the group programs is that many women don't feel like they have permission to dream because they've been told by so many other people around them to be realistic, be logical. You're in your 30s, you're in your 40s, you're in your 50s. Who do you think you are? How do we dream a bigger dream, especially if we haven't seen, we're not a manifester, and we haven't seen, or we don't believe we are, the dreams that we wanted in the past come to fruition?
Well, First of all, I love that you even ask these questions because you're such a manifester. Like you're such a abundant person in vision, so abundant in faith, so abundant in creativity that like, of course you would ask that question. In the book, one of the things I talk about is you can live two lives. You can either live a life from probability or possibility. And when you think about JFK saying, we want to put a man on the moon, he didn't know how they would do that. It wasn't probable, but it's possible, right? And the people who've moved humanity forward are people who say, I don't care what the past shows me evidence of. That's just probability. But I'm a miracle. God's world is a miracle. So what's possible? Let's go. Right? You and I both know tons of people like this, like Amy Purdy, who lost her legs from the knees down when she was 19 from meningitis. And she says to the doctor, when am I going to get on a snowboard? And he's like, I really don't know how to tell you this, but you're going to have two prosthetic legs. How are you going to be on a snowboard? And she gets up on a snowboard and she gets flung off. And her coach says to her, I think it's a miracle that you're even alive. It's a miracle that you even learned how to walk in prosthetics, but I think we need to put this to bed. Like, I don't think you can snowboard in these prosthetics. It won't work. And she says that night, sitting in the snow, she said to herself, I'm either going to give up or I'll make a different decision, which is I'll be the first one to do it. And so then, of course, she talks to all these engineers and finds a way to make feet bend and engineer them so that they can fit inside a snowboard. And now they're in the Smithsonian. Now, that is a radical possibility, right? And now thousands of people have gone and done that because of her. And she was in the Paralympic Games and she won. I mean, it's incredible. She was on Dancing with the Stars and she won, runner up. If she can do that, obviously you can dream a greater possibility, right? If she can do that, obviously you can think for yourself, how do I raise my standards and have a better relationship? Or, how could I find the gifts that God gave me that I'm sitting on gold and put them in the world and charge what I'm really worth and charge what the people I serve are really worth? Of course, right? And I talk about in the book how we took my kids to the Natural History Museum and we went to the planetarium and we're looking at this world that God made, you know? And I'm like, do you know, I'm saying to my kids, do you realize how expansive the universe is? It's actually so insane. It makes you kind of dizzy. You're just like, I don't even know if I can think about it because it's so big. But the point is, if you talk into AI and tell it to make a version of you that, I don't know, you're half unicorn, it'll do whatever you want. Your brain will work for you, right? You can push the bounds of your mind and expand your consciousness. And it will work on behalf of what you tell it to do, just like AI. So if you say to yourself, okay, Cathy Heller, I want you to be aware that your greatest resource is your resourcefulness. And I want you to pull out from yourself 3 ideas of what you could do that would make you feel more empowered, more yourself, more authentic. What would you say? Where would you go? What would you charge? What travel would you do? Like, of course you'll get the ideas. The problem you have is that you live from probability. So you say to yourself, well, this is what happened to my mom. So this is what's most probable. This is what the past looks like. So I'm going to project the past onto the present moment every single day. So what I'll just keep doing is reliving Groundhog Day instead of living in the present moment where all potentials do exist. And if I could just shut off the probability machine, which is constantly looking at the past and giving me an outcome of what's most likely, I'm going to say, I'm going to find the evidence of what's possible. And then even if it's the tiniest little idea, you're going to say, but it's possible. And then here's the fun part, Patrice. It's like, forget what happens. The outcome is not the outcome. It's who you become in that process. It's what happens to you, how you get activated, right? You watch The Karate Kid. It's like, forget the fact that he wins the match at the end. He becomes a person who's a different version of himself. And Pat Morita the whole time is like, I know you have this in you. I'm literally going to set you up to be so uncomfortable because I want you to access your power. And when you're comfortable and when you're playing from this place of fear, you don't get to know who you are. And that's your biggest saddest crime against humanity is that you go through your life and you didn't run the bases the way that you would have run the bases. And so you don't realize how strong you are because you didn't put it to the test. And so who cares? You and I are like, who cares? The outcome is like so secondary to the fulfillment in showing up fully, right?
Yeah. And speaking of how strong you are, I was just speaking with someone today, and we were talking about this being the equivalent of a lion who's been in the zoo for many years, and it's so used to being catered to. So it's given water at the appropriate time, and maybe given, its food at the appropriate time. And then at some point, they say, to heck with the zoo. They fling the doors open, and the lion is just like, oh, but where's my food? Where's my water? It forgets that it's a lion and it is strong enough to go hunt and go literally do whatever the heck it wants to do because it's the lion. And it's not that it doesn't know it's a lion, right? And that the instincts are not still in it. It's just been lulled into complacency and kept in this zoo. And for many of us, that is the job, that is the relationship that doesn't serve us, that is, any space that just is not conducive to who we really are and the power that we really have. And so we start to play the game of probability, right? Well, I mean, last time I saw someone go outside the gate, it didn't turn out well for them. Maybe I'll just stay here. It's probably best that I just stay here in case they bring my water. I want to be right in position. It's too much to leave this entrapment of comfortability or safety or whatever we're calling it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say two things about that. That is so big. Number one, most people don't know this, but in April, we're, about to celebrate Passover. Only 20% of the Jewish people left Egypt. 80% of the Jewish people stayed in slavery in Egypt, didn't go with Moses to the Holy Land because they said, it's too unknown. I'm not going to leave. And that is insane. When I tell people that, they're like, are you serious? I'm like, of course. But that's also, think about how many people are living that out right now. They're not going to leave the job, even though the job makes them feel dead inside, even though they're not getting paid what they want. They're not going to leave the relationship, even though they haven't been into this relationship for years and they feel talked down to because it's what is familiar. And I want to say something that I wrote this in my book. This is another thing that I just thought was so powerful. My friend Alex Benayan tells this story. He wrote this book called The Third Door. And in this book, he interviewed Maya Angelou, Lady Gaga, Warren Buffett, Steven Spielberg. It's an amazing book. And at the end of interviewing these very wonderful people, he wanted a title for the book. And he said that the title for the book was The Third Door because he said, think about a nightclub. Most people are waiting in line at the first door and they just wait and they just wait. And they spend their whole life waiting in line. He goes, then there's the second door, but that's only if you're on the VIP list because you have a famous father. Most people aren't on that list. He said, but the people he interviewed, they weren't on that list either. They didn't have a famous last name. So how did they get in? He said they took the third door, the third entrance. He said they didn't have a hard time finding the third door. There's always 3 doors to a building. There's always a side door. That's not the hard part. He said the hard part in the story where he interviewed all of those people, the hardest part was not walking through the third door. It was leaving the line. He said the hardest part is leaving the line for the first door because these are the people who you've grown up with. These are the people who told you what is right for you to deserve and what isn't. And if you start to step out of line like Moana, when she's like, I want to leave the reef, and they love you so much, they say to you, no, you won't be safe. You shouldn't go out there. Nobody survives that. Or they'll say to you, you don't think we're enough for you? What do you need that's out there that we can't give you? And so then she's wrestling with, am I disloyal? Are they right that I won't actually survive it? And all of us in our life want belonging so badly. We want to belong to the people that we think we need to belong to, like Elphaba, right? And ultimately, we all love Wicked because at the end, Elphaba says, if that's love, it comes at way too high a cost. And I'm going to go leave the line. And there is a moment in all of our journeys where we have to leave the line. Now, here's the thing. In most realities, the majority of the people that love you, they're going to come too. You're going to leave the line and they're going to say, you know what? Because you left the line, it helped me grow. Thank you. But there will be some people, they won't come. And our need to belong and be approved of keeps us from our soul's mission, because at a very young age, it feels like life or death if these people don't love us anymore or don't accept us. So we will contort and conform ourselves so that we can be loved and belong, even if it means self-abandonment. And at some point you say, I'm going beyond the reef.
Yeah. I'd rather take my chances in the wild is how I've said it before. I just have to take my chances in the wild, because you know what? The urge that compels you to go find the third door doesn't leave. Like you stand there. It doesn't leave. You stand there and then you're just in your mind, you're hemming and hawing. You're like peeking over there. You're, does anyone else see it? Like, can we talk about this? Nobody else wants to come with me. Like, it just keeps nagging at you. It's the call until you answer or don't. It makes me sad to see the people who stay in the line and don't want to go explore the third door.
Yeah. It makes me sad too, because what is that quote? Bronnie Ware says, the greatest regret of the dying is not having lived life on your own terms. It's like, there is such a, Marianne Williamson said to me that Mother Teresa herself didn't scratch the surface on what she could have even done. That's how magnificent we are, that there's so much to being a human being. Like the ways in which we can find a portal within us straight to the divine that wakes up all the love in the world. I mean, my mom sometimes says to me, what do you want from me? Like, I'm just a person. And I'm like, you're a person. Like, you're a vehicle for God's light. Like, think about what one person can do in history, right?
Ooh,
think about Dr. King, think about Gandhi, and by the way, you don't have to be famous to live into your potential, right? If you look at an orchestra, a cello is meant to be a cello, a triangle is a triangle. And whatever the doing you is, you know when you've hit that sweet spot, and you know when you're lying to yourself and you're dimming your light. It's not about how famous you are. It's about how much in alignment you are. And it's such a great thing to have these conversations, even if it's a little uncomfortable. Like, I feel like you and I might bother people a little, but it's a good bother, because it's the kind of bother where you say, she's right. It's inconvenient, but I do know something about myself that I'm not willing to know. It is inconvenient, but there is something I need to do. And what might happen? And Mark Groves, who, he said something so brilliant to me. He said, what happens when you do tell people the truth? What you're doing is you're saying, I trust you with the truth. So what does your relationship get to be? What kind of work do you get to do? What kind of clients do you get to call in because you're now telling the truth? Maybe it's a whole better existence. Maybe the relationship gets an upgrade. Maybe your business gets an upgrade. Maybe people are like, oh, she's finally saying it. So whatever that is beyond the reef, like you said, it's not going to go away. No. As long as you're living, it's not going to go away. Calling you.
So Cathy, in seasons like this, where there is so much uncertainty and people have experienced a lot of loss and there's lack and there feels like scarcity, there's all these messages as soon as you open up social media or you turn on the news. How does one continue to keep themselves moving towards abundance or embodying abundance in the midst of all of the talk from people in the line?
Yeah. First of all, I think it's a great question. I think it's the question, because like I talk about this in the book, that if somebody gave you a waffle iron and you used it as a paperweight, that would be such a waste, because if you just plugged it in, you'd realize you could get breakfast out of it. Very often, instead of plugging in to what's true, we're plugging into fake news, which is to say this: abundance is not outside of us, right? If you ask somebody, what do you want that would make you feel abundant? The first thing they usually say is $5 million, $10 million, a big house, this, that, the other thing. And then I usually reply and say, all of that sounds great. And I want you to have whatever it is that makes you feel abundant. But I also know the truth, which is you have way bigger dreams. You did not come to the world for a pile of things. You came to the world to feel inner peace. You came to the world to feel flow state. You came to the world to feel a mystical experience. You came to the world to see God's synchronicities performed before you in your life and to live into your potential. And when we are plugged in, so to speak, instead of plugging into our own electricity, which is having a meeting every self with you and your creator, and you say, where would you have me go? What would you have me know? What do I need to remember today? Where do I need to put my focus today? When you don't do that, but what you do is you open up your phone or you look at everything in the line, what you're going to get confused with is you're going to start to say, in order for me to feel abundant, I need more likes. I need more approval. I need more validation. I need more money. And then you'll just keep moving that goalpost and you'll never feel abundant because you can never feel abundant from the outside in. But when you feel that you, as my rabbi says, you're a masterpiece because you're a piece of the master. You're someone because you're some in the one. And God has assigned you. He put you here because you're needed, because you bring the glory to this world, because of just you being the loving, most compassionate version of you will save another human being just at the bus stop today. When you get that kind of abundance, what's really uncanny is that the other kinds of abundance don't miss you. Because when you surrender and you're in wholeness and you feel whole right now, that is a magnet for everything else. If a woman goes on a date and she's so desperate to be liked, it will be the worst date. But if she goes on a date and she is just RSVP to her own party, she's enjoying her life, the guy's going to be like, I didn't even know I like brunettes. I think I'm into this girl. Like, I don't even know I like freckled girls. I want to date this girl because what do you want? You want wholeness. Right? It moves in you. It's so sexy. And when you feel wholeness, you're not in the podcast for the outcome. So you just enjoy doing the podcast. Of course, the podcast takes off. When you feel wholeness, you find significance at the DMV. Next thing you know, you made a great friend. Next thing you know, all these incredible things are happening because you're not needing to be patient, because you don't need them to happen. Because if you make a list of all the things that you want in order to feel abundant, I'm going to say to you, why do you want those things? It's because of how you think they'll make you feel. Why would you wait for something to happen to make you feel that way when you can feel the gratitude of being alive right now? You can look outside your window and really focus and say, can I hear the birds sing? Can I see the 49 shades of green? And when you do that, you're going to say, oh, what a relief. I get it right now. And all these people, they're such suckers. They feel like they got to do all this stuff to finally get to the top of the mountain. And I'm going to tell you, you could be at the most beautiful hotel with the most gorgeous champagne. And if you're in a fight with your mother-in-law or you're pissed at your best friend, it doesn't matter that you're in a silk robe. It matters what's going on in your head. It matters where your heart is. It matters what you are attuned to. And so we don't recognize that every $1 billion ever made came from creativity first, right?
Yeah.
Walt Disney flying over Anaheim, he was looking at swampland. He turned to the helicopter pilot. He said, do you see it? And there's tears streaming down his face. He goes, why are you crying? He goes, there's a world here. It's not a swamp. It's a world. He took that called nothing. It was air. It was an idea. It was nothing but an idea, and sold it and sold it and sold it to all these investors until he built an empire. Same thing with Apple, right? Steve Jobs was a monk. He was a meditator for 15 years, sitting quietly, and then boom, had this idea. What if technology was beautiful? What if calligraphy was how it felt to work on your computer? That's an interesting, very disruptive idea. Not about utility, it's about beauty. Technology equals beauty. Yeah, it equals music. It equals your creativity. Technology is a path to creativity. Oh, that was Apple. Oh, why do people pay 15 times more for an Apple product? Because it makes you feel like you're a creative genius because you own it. What an amazing thing, right? So the bottom line is, how do you stay connected? Because you remember, it's never been outside of you. It doesn't matter what other people are doing outside of you. It matters that you know that your abundance is a breath away. It matters that you realize that you're a walking gold mine for love, purpose, possibility. And wherever you walk through the world, you gave that to other people. You just gave it just by being connected to that. So when you remember that, and when you know that, and when you live with that, what's the best compliment you'll get? Wow, you have great energy. And when people tell you you have great energy, you won't be able to help becoming successful, because great energy leads other people to having good ideas, just having you around. And great energy is love, and great energy is oneness, and great energy makes space for anyone at the table, whoever they voted for. Great energy says, interesting, I don't agree, that's cool, okay, I respect you. I don't agree at all, but I'm glad you're here, because we get to have differences in conversation. It's like great energy is oneness. Great energy is love and wisdom, right? The Dalai Lama doesn't walk around saying, I have to protect my energy today. No way. He's just going to project his energy. He's going to come in the room and say, I love you anyway, no matter what. And I love you for real. And I hope you know that you are love. And people are going to set down their crap because somebody who's projecting good energy walked in the room and didn't even pay attention to the bad energy, because it doesn't affect you, because it can't touch you, right? You're the sunlight. It's got nothing on you, right? Hate and all that. It's such a low vibe. Just override. Go into love. Go into power. Go into spiritual power. It's like, this is why when I tell my story, I'm like, yeah, so I spent 3 years in Jerusalem and then I moved to LA. It's like, no, those 3 years, like that was the reprogramming of the software in my brain and heart. And because of that, everything flowed, right? Because I know where I'm from and I know where I'm going, and it's all about God, and God's in everything. It's the infinite. It's the most abundant thing there is. So
God's in everything. There's so much. Oh, I just love you. There is so much. I just smile, sitting here smiling for those of you that are listening. Like, I have the biggest smile as Cathy is speaking, because I just resonate with so much of this. Like, when my clients ask me questions about, but what about Apple changing the algorithm for this or that, or this thing or that thing? I'm like, I don't know what to tell you except for keep showing up in the places and spaces that feel good for you, in the way that feels good for you, in the way that lights you up, because you are here to be a light worker, in the way that keeps your energy, your vibration, your frequency high, and turn down all of that noise and just keep turning up, like the internal voice that is guiding you to what your next and best thing is. I cannot control any of those things. I don't know what the heck is going on Instagram with algorithms. I don't know what Facebook is doing. And I'm like, I just cannot give that the power and the energy. I just refuse. And some will say, well, you sound delusional. Well, then delusional I am. Delusional I will be, but I will also have more peace and more energy for myself and for those that do tune in and do come around and are assigned to me. I just have to carry the delusion until people get out the line. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I think about, we now know all this about these people that live in these things called blue zones. They live into their hundreds. I mean, these people are listening to the birds more than they're listening to the news, right? And these people are doing a lot of good for humanity because their carbon footprint is low, and they're making amazing food, and they're giving us something to see as a model of community and life. And they pray all the time, and they live in communities, and it's so beautiful. And I don't think they're delusional. I think they just decided to live life how it's meant to be lived, which is to care about your neighbors, to pray, to talk to your creator, to plant healthy food, to not rip the grass and make it fake. And, it's just like, you get to choose your own adventure. And no, I don't think you're delusional. I think you're just tuning into what really matters, which is your heart. And that's where all the real wisdom is anyway. It's definitely not anywhere else.
Do people ever challenge you, Cathy, about the idea of abundance being an abundance of, well, first of all, you define abundance for us. I can't believe I haven't asked you that. You define abundance.
Well, no, I mean, you did we already touched on it a little bit, because it's like, to me, abundance is what we're really after, which is well-being and thriving, really thriving. And when we really thrive, it's not because we're hooked into needing Cartier bracelets. It's because we know our essential intrinsic value, and our mind and our heart is so wide open. That's real abundance. But because that is real abundance, it doesn't mean you can't have physical abundance. I love the idea that you can be both fully spiritually abundant and fully materially abundant, because they make sense that they go together. Because if it's all about oneness, then one part of the garden thriving makes the whole garden thrive. One part of the garden withering makes the whole garden eventually get sick. So when you think about King David, he wrote these Psalms. You know, we sing this hallelujah song because of him. This is a man who is so spiritually focused and owned an empire, right? This is a really beautiful model, meaning to say, if you're a redwood tree, you're not meant to have a little teaspoon of water. You're meant to have tons of that nutrient, which means the resource of water, you need a lot more of it than this little tiny bush over here, right? So a dolphin is not going to survive if you put it in your jacuzzi. It needs a whole ocean. Okay. We're the only people. Eagles are meant to soar. Everything's meant to thrive. The only thing that you've ever seen that God created that keeps itself from thriving is people. Ooh. Because we made a decision that since there's so much scarcity, for me to have more, I would make you have less. Whatever made you think that that's true? It's the opposite. If you have money and you paint your house, you just improve the cost of your house, and you just made your neighbor's house more valuable because you made your house more valuable. That's how we work. When I make money, my money goes into a bank account and starts paying off people's loans, student debt, mortgages, and credit cards, because that's how it works. We're a oneness. We all work together. So it makes no sense to me that you think by you not having something, you're going to benefit somebody else. It's the opposite. The Maharal, which was a 16th century rabbi, he said, if you took a candle, you can light an unlimited amount of candles. That's how abundance works. When you open a store on Main Street, you just created more opportunities for people to thrive and make money and open their own stores on Main Street. A gas station opens up from another gas station next door. They both do better. So abundance is both. You don't have to decide which one you get or which one you don't get. But what I am saying is the way we manifest is by surrendering into wholeness, because wholeness is the vibration. The vibration of wholeness means I feel abundant. And then, as Wayne Dyer says, you get back not what you want, but what you are. So you've got to get to that place where you're not hooked into needing the relationship because you'll just ruin it, or needing the money because you'll just sabotage it. The wholeness is the engine to all of the kinds of abundance, because that's what you're after anyway. So that's how I would define it. But I also give women and people, but I mostly speak to women, there's like radical permission to let yourself be rich, because you're going to be a walking possibility that people can be spiritual and rich, and people can be kind and rich. And every time you go to a hospital, there's a name on it because somebody kind who was rich donated the hospital. So it's like, why would you be less of a steward for money? That doesn't make any sense. Help the whole collective. Be as abundant as you can be. Shine.
Mm-hmm. I had that conversation during the California wildfires, which I know you had to evacuate. You were gone for 10 days from your home, and we talked a little bit about it before we started recording. But people shaming folks who were still, posting and selling and serving, and shaming them like, don't you know something is going on? But the reality is there's always something going on.
Always. Since the beginning of history, since the beginning of time.
Yeah. And so if it were, well, something is happening in this city, in this state, or and so now you can't sell. There was a lot of people who felt for days, for weeks, it was just inappropriate to still even mention their offers or put things on sale. And I remember talking to my coach about it, and she said, what are the stores that you guys have in California? It's not Publix. I said, no, it's Ralph's. She said, well, he's still selling. There's a Ralph's right in the areas somewhere of these areas that have been impacted. And it's a gift that Ralph's would continue to serve the community because people need it. And they're right there in that space. And so to shame people, who are not even there, but also these are the same folks who were able to give and able to serve, able to donate, able to do all the things. It's just a very
shame is something that the only people who cast shame on people is because they're holding shame. So there's always going to be people in the world who are hating on whatever. And it's actually kind of how it is. So in a way, it's not a problem that it happens. It kind of just always happens. The problem is you thinking that you're going to live life according to it happening. It's like, there's always people who project onto you the shame they carry for themselves, and then they want to judge because they judge themselves. So that's just going to be there, right? And you're just going to do your best to make your side of the street as clean as possible. And there will always be somebody who goes, well, I don't like you anyway because I don't like peaches and you like peaches, or I don't like you anyway. Who cares? It's just like, that's human behavior, but you don't need to live your life by it.
Right. It definitely doesn't promote your own abundance practices. We know that. It's a distraction. Yeah. Well, there's one more line that I just want to share from the book. And again, I'm so excited. Cathy has already agreed that for all of us who participate in
With
the
pleasure.
book club for Abundant Ever After, Tools for Creating a Life of Prosperity and Ease, we will be reading this over the next 8 weeks together.
That
And
is so
Cathy,
nice. That makes me so happy. I was such a giant compliment that you chose it as one of these books. It's so, 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 so nice.
Oh, I'm so excited about it. The community is already excited. We've been reading books together for the last several months now. And it's just the collective energy of sharing the nuggets and the takeaways with one another. And we read it over 8 to 10 weeks because I love to give us time for integration. I don't want us to just read the information and think because we know the words, we truly understand the work.
Right.
And so it gives us time to implement different practices from the book as a community. So I'm super excited.
It's beautiful.
And I know when you come on in a few months for us to have our conversation in the app, my prayer is that we have a lot of breakthroughs and stories to share about the magic that's been created by implementing. But there's a line that you said as we wind down that from the book that I really love. It's just that if we belong to everyone, we cannot belong to ourselves.
That's so beautiful that you love that. I feel like you're such a testimony to belonging to ourselves. And, you know, it's really just so fascinating. I say that because I think a lot of people can relate, but I was definitely a people pleaser growing up. My dad was kind of violent and drank a lot, and he left us, and he had 4 different marriages. And I think my survival skill was to be really pleasing and to just make sure everyone was okay. And when I was 40 years old, I went to a program outside of Nashville called Onsite, which was really remarkable. And it's like really special therapy that you do in a group for a week with some amazing leaders. And they have you reenact a scene from your childhood. The therapist had me pick 2 people to play my parents and then to pick somebody to play me. And we reenacted this moment. And long story short, at the end of like a few hours of going through this, like what they call psychodrama, family dynamics, the therapist said to me, and she's Native American, and she has a long braid like down to her butt. She's like 75 years old. So she like means business. She's a really cool person. And she said, I want you to go over to the girl who's playing you, and I want you to whisper in her ear, you don't have to live here anymore. And she said, and now I want you to tell her, I'm coming to get you. And I sobbed and broke through so much in that one moment that I realized I wanted everyone to be so okay that I abandoned myself in 1,000 ways. And that 8-year-old girl in the living room cannot do that one more day. She just can't do it anymore. And I'm coming now as the wise version of me to pick her up and dust her off and say, you're going to be you and you're going to belong to you. And if people really love you, they'll stick around. And if they don't, it's not going to be worth abandoning yourself anymore. And I think so many of us have adopted that strategy without even knowing it, where we self-abandon. And so I think people like you, it's very rare, but there's amazing light that shines through you that it's so self-honoring that it forces people to at least look at, if not choose to, honor themselves. So thank you for that work that you do, because it's really extraordinary and really so rare. And just amen. to it. Just keep going.
Amen. Amen. Cathy, thank you for being here. You never cease to amaze me. You just open your mouth and just the gems drop. And I
That's
have
how
to,
I feel about you. And thank you so much. That's how I feel about you 100%.
I really love reading the books with the community. And so I've had the book. I knew I wanted Abundant Ever After to be a part of our book club. And I read like 8 pages and I'm like, no, close it. So you can like share in real time. But as I'm reading, I'm like, this is so
Thank you.
Cathy. Everything is underlined. All the little sections I did get to read already.
So
I do
loving.
this in real time with
You're so loving and kind. Thank you.
I know. You guys, I know. And when I see Cathy, I just want to hug her like a zillion times. You're a good hugger too.
You're amazing, babe.
You're a wonderful hugger. Thank you so much. We are going to link to all the things. How do people find you? I know you're everywhere, but still.
The name of the book is the same name as the podcast, Abundant Ever After. So you can find both of those things. And then I'm on Instagram at Cathy.Heller, Cathy's with a C. But if you want extra resources, I think if you go to cathyheller.com/book, we did that thing where we make you extra things. So there's like a meditation for free and whatever if you want it. And thank you for such a gorgeous, beautiful conversation. It's really such an honor that you make space because you're so special. And I loved every second of being with you. And I can't begin to imagine what all your listeners are like. Because if they're listening to you, then they're so smart. They have such a good heart. So I'm so happy to be acquainted. So thank you for having me on.
Oh, thanks, Cathy. You guys, I hope that you have truly enjoyed this conversation with the one, the only Cathy Heller. We are a community of like-hearted people. We're not like-minded. We don't all come from the same background. We haven't all had the same experiences, but we do all believe in the power of purpose and abundance and living a life that is rooted in faith, not fear. And if that's what you're looking for, come into the Redefining Wealth app. It's totally free to download. I do daily lives there where I just continue to encourage and uplift and share these wisdom nuggets and gems. And we have a good time in the app. You can find your abundant buddy, your abundant bestie there in the app and come get all the information. I'm dropping the details today for Cathy's book club for Abundant Ever After. And you'll see the breakdown and have an opportunity to read with us and just enjoy this time. There is a third door. There is abundance available to us and we can do it together. You want to be in a space where the language aligns with what you say you desire. So come on in, Redefining Wealth app on your iOS or Android device. And that's it for us. That's it for us this week. Until next time, I want you to live your life's purpose, find fulfillment, and of course, earn more without ever feeling like you have to chase money. We'll talk to you later.